My unfaithful wife wanted a break and lied about going to her parents' house. But when I saw her car at her ex's place, I made sure she came crawling back on her knees, begging me. Hey everyone, this is the story of how my wife basically wanted to play house with her coworker while staying married to me. Bad move, Melissa. Here's what went down. I'm a 31-year-old man who runs construction project management for a major company here in Florida. We're talking serious money, 6 figures annually. And I manage crews that handle everything from commercial office buildings to those fancy gated community developments where wealthy people live. I started from the bottom, pushing wheelbarrows when I was just 18 years old. Now I'm the guy who decides which contracts we take and determines how much we charge for our services. My ex-wife Melissa is 26 and works what I'd call a basic marketing job downtown, pushing social media posts for a mid-tier company. We first met 8 years ago when I was 23, and she was this 18-year-old college student finishing up her marketing degree. Back then, I was already making real money while she was eating instant noodles and stressing about finals like most college kids do. Here's the thing about younger women. They either grow up with you as partners or they don't. Melissa seemed like she was going to be one of the good ones. She would wake up at 4 a.m. to make my lunch before I headed out to job sites. This wasn't some basic peanut butter and jelly garbage either. We're talking about proper sandwiches with good deli meat, apple slices, those fancy crackers, the works. The girl knew I was grinding to build something substantial, and I genuinely appreciated that level of support. She'd get excited about the small things that actually mattered to our future. We'd drive through different neighborhoods looking at houses for sale, and she'd point out ones she liked while talking about where we'd put a workshop for my tools and how she'd set up the kitchen. She had this whole vision of us building a life together, which was honestly refreshing because most women her age were still trying to find themselves, or whatever that means. Our routine worked really well for both of us. I'd handle all the big financial responsibilities, the mortgage, utilities, insurance, car payments, and basically anything that required actual money or serious decision-making. She'd handle the domestic responsibilities like cooking, cleaning, and making sure we had groceries. It seemed like a fair trade to me. I'm busting my ass in 90-degree heat, managing crews of guys who'd walk off the job if you looked at them wrong. And she's making sure I come home to a clean house and decent food. The bedroom situation was good too. We were intimate twice a week, sometimes more if we were both feeling it. She'd actually initiate sometimes, which I always appreciated. When she turned 21, we bought a house together. Nothing crazy expensive, but a decent place in a good neighborhood where property values were climbing steadily. Marriage happened when she was 22, and her parents insisted on a prenuptial agreement. I thought it was actually a good idea since it protects both of us if anything goes sideways. It included an infidelity clause, of course. This detail becomes very important later in the story. The first 4 years of our marriage were genuinely solid. Melissa consistently kept up her end of our arrangement, and I kept up mine. She'd have dinner ready when I got home from work. We'd watch TV together, and maybe hang out with friends on weekends. It just worked. I was pulling in more money each year, she was getting promoted at her little company, and we were building something meaningful together. But then March hit, and everything started changing in ways I didn't see coming. At first, I thought it was just winter blues or work stress affecting her mood. Florida winters aren't particularly harsh, but some people get weird when the days are shorter and the weather changes. Melissa started getting increasingly moody and picking fights over absolutely nothing. She began acting like everything I did was somehow wrong, no matter how minor or well-intentioned. The first major red flag was when our bedroom life went from twice a week to maybe once every 2 weeks. When I'd try to initiate intimacy, suddenly she was always too tired or had a headache. It's the classic excuse that every married guy recognizes, right? I didn't make a big deal about it initially, because sometimes life gets busy and stressful, and I figured it was just a temporary phase. But it kept happening consistently, and the pattern became impossible to ignore. Then she completely stopped cooking. Just entirely stopped. I'd come home after managing 4 different job sites, dealing with client complaints, and making sure payroll was correct for 18 different guys, only to find her sprawled on the couch scrolling through TikTok. "I didn't feel like cooking tonight. Can we just order something?" became her standard daily greeting when I walked through the door. Look, I understand that everyone has off days where they don't feel like handling responsibilities. But when off days become literally every single day, that's not stress or fatigue. That's just being lazy and inconsiderate. We were spending $250 a week on takeout because this woman couldn't be bothered to throw some chicken in the oven or prepare a simple meal. When I pointed out how much money we were wasting on constant restaurant orders, she got completely defensive about it. "I work too, you know. I'm not your personal chef," she snapped at me. That's when I knew we had a serious problem brewing between us. Here's the thing about Melissa's work situation that made her attitude so ridiculous. Her job consisted of posting on Instagram for a company that sells office furniture. She'd show up at 9:30 a.m., leave at 4:30 p.m., had weekends completely off, got every single holiday, and called in sick whenever she felt like it without consequences. Meanwhile, I'm out there before sunrise making sure million-dollar contracts don't get screwed up because one of my guys decided to install windows in the wrong section of a building. The disrespect started subtle at first, but it grew more obvious over time. My work boots had sat by the front door in the same spot for years without any issues. Suddenly, they became a major problem. "You're so inconsiderate. Can't you put those in the garage instead?" If I forgot to rinse a single dish after eating breakfast at 4:30 a.m. before heading to work, I'd get lectured. "Do I have to do everything around here?" she'd complain. This criticism was coming from a woman who hadn't cooked a meal in months and contributed virtually nothing to our household maintenance. I shut that nonsense down immediately. "Melissa, I pay 75% of the bills in this house. You don't get to lecture me about a dish when you haven't contributed to dinner in 2 months." She didn't like hearing those facts, but they were completely accurate. I was covering the mortgage, both car payments, insurance, utilities, groceries, basically everything that cost real money. Her little marketing job barely covered her student loan payments and credit card bills. The fighting escalated and got worse. She'd find fault with absolutely everything I did or suggested. If I suggested a restaurant for dinner, that place is too loud. If I planned a weekend trip, why can't we just stay home for once? If I bought something useful for the house, we don't need that. You're always wasting money. Meanwhile, she was buying new clothes every single week, getting her nails done regularly, and spending money on frivolous stuff while complaining about every dollar I spent on necessities. Around this time, she started talking about seeing some therapist named Victoria for what she called personal growth. I thought maybe that was actually a good idea. Maybe a professional could help her figure out why she'd turned into such a pain in the ass and get our relationship back on track. Looking back now, that should have been red flag number 1. Happy, well-adjusted people don't suddenly need therapy to figure out their authentic selves. April rolled around, and instead of things getting better, Melissa somehow managed to get even worse. The whole personal growth thing with her therapist became her convenient excuse for absolutely everything she didn't want to do. "Can't cook dinner tonight. Victoria says I need to stop people-pleasing and focus on my own needs. Don't want to spend time together this weekend. I'm working on establishing healthy boundaries." This Victoria character was filling my wife's head with all kinds of complete nonsense. Suddenly, Melissa was constantly talking about her authentic self and how she'd been suppressing her true feelings for years. Meanwhile, I'm thinking her authentic self was apparently someone who contributes absolutely nothing to our household while complaining about everything I do to keep our lives running smoothly. The bedroom situation went from bad to completely non-existent. We went from maybe twice a month to perhaps once, if I was extremely lucky. And when it did happen, she'd just lay there like she was doing me some huge favor. No enthusiasm, no participation, just going through the motions like a robot. It was like having sex with a corpse that occasionally complained about my technique. I tried talking to her about it directly one evening. "Melissa, we used to have a good thing going between us. What's changed?" Her response was infuriating. "Maybe I'm just not that person anymore. Victoria says it's normal for people to evolve." Evolution, right? More like devolution if you ask me. She was becoming a worse version of herself, not a better one. The cooking situation got so bad that I started meal prepping on Sundays. I'd spend my one day off cooking enough food for the entire week because I couldn't count on her to handle basic adulting responsibilities. This woman who used to take genuine pride in taking care of her husband now acted like making a simple sandwich was somehow beneath her dignity. When I pointed out how much money we were wasting on constant takeout orders, she got absolutely nasty with me. "Maybe if you didn't expect me to be your personal servant, I'd be more motivated to cook," she snapped. Personal servant? I was asking her to do the one thing she'd always done while I handled literally everything else that required actual effort or money. It's like asking someone to keep doing their job and being told you're oppressing them for having basic expectations. The house started falling apart too. Dishes would sit in the sink for days until I couldn't stand it anymore and handled them myself. Laundry would pile up until I dealt with it. She'd leave her crap everywhere. Makeup scattered across the bathroom counter, clothes thrown on the bedroom floor, purse and keys dumped on the kitchen table. I'd come home from managing crews all day to find my house looking like a tornado had hit it. Her attitude toward my work became increasingly disrespectful as well. I'd come home exhausted from dealing with difficult clients, weather delays, equipment breakdowns, and crew drama, and she'd roll her eyes when I wanted to decompress for a few minutes. "All you do is complain about work," she'd say dismissively. This was coming from someone whose biggest daily stress was choosing which Instagram filter to use for her company's furniture posts. She started working late more often, which at first made me think maybe she was finally taking her job seriously and trying to get promoted or something. But the late nights became a regular pattern, and she'd come home acting weird. She'd immediately jump in the shower, keep her phone close to her at all times, and be secretive about her day when I asked simple questions. Any guy who's been around the block knows exactly what that behavior looks like. The disrespect reached a breaking point one night in June. I'd had a particularly brutal day. One of my crews had screwed up a major installation. The client was threatening to cancel a $65,000 contract, and I spent 7 hours fixing their mistakes and smoothing things over. I came home to find Melissa on the couch watching Netflix with a pile of takeout containers scattered across the coffee table. "Rough day?" I asked, trying to be conversational and connect with my wife. "You could say that," she replied without even looking up from her phone. "I posted 18 times today and only got moderate engagement. The algorithm is so unfair." I just stared at her in disbelief. Her biggest problem was not getting enough likes on social media while I was out there saving contracts and managing real problems that actually mattered. That's when it hit me like a ton of bricks. This woman had absolutely no idea what actual work looked like. "Melissa, I need you to step up around here. This isn't working," I told her directly, trying to address the situation head on. Her response was predictably infuriating. "Step up? I'm working on myself, Dylan. Victoria says relationships work best when both people are growing individually." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Victoria doesn't pay our bills, Melissa. I do. And I need a partner who contributes something besides Instagram expertise." She had the audacity to roll her eyes at me. "Maybe you need to accept that I'm not the same person you married. People change, Dylan. I'm not going to be your 1950s housewife anymore." A 1950s housewife? For wanting her to cook dinner and not live like a complete slob. That's when I realized she was either completely delusional or testing me to see how much disrespect I'd tolerate before I snapped. Either way, I wasn't playing that game anymore. "Fine," I said calmly. "But if you're not going to be a wife, don't expect me to be a husband. We can just be roommates who split bills." She didn't like that response at all. She started yapping and carrying on about how I didn't understand her journey and how she needed support, not pressure. But she still didn't cook dinner, clean the house, or do anything productive. Just more tears and more excuses without any actual change in behavior. The therapy sessions with Victoria became twice a week. Melissa would drive across town every Monday and Thursday, spending $175 each time to talk about her feelings with this woman. Meanwhile, she was complaining about me spending money on tools I actually needed for work. The hypocrisy was absolutely insane. Her family started asking questions too. Melissa's mom called me at work one day asking if everything was okay because Melissa seemed stressed and different lately. I told her we were working through some things, but honestly, I was starting to wonder if this marriage was even worth saving. When your wife acts like being married to you is some kind of burden, maybe it's time to cut your losses. The breaking point came during Independence Day weekend. I had planned a camping trip, something we used to do together all the time. Melissa used to love the outdoors, or at least she claimed to when we were dating. When I brought up the idea, she rolled her eyes dramatically. "I'm not really into camping anymore. It's just sitting in the woods pretending to have fun," she said dismissively. "We used to love camping together," I reminded her. "Remember that trip to the Everglades where we hiked for 4 days straight?" Her response floored me. That was the old me. I'm discovering I prefer more sophisticated activities now. Sophisticated activities like scrolling TikTok and complaining about everything, apparently. I went camping alone and had the best weekend I'd had in months. No complaining, no attitude, no drama, just peace, quiet, and time to think about what I really wanted in life. When I got back, Melissa was annoyed that I'd gone without her. "You could have just stayed home if I didn't want to go," she said petulantly. "I wanted to go camping. You didn't. So I went camping, I explained logically. That's not how marriage works, Dylan, she shot back. Exactly, I replied. Marriage is supposed to be about partnership. What we have now isn't marriage. It's me supporting an ungrateful roommate who contributes nothing. She stormed off to call Victoria, probably to talk about how emotionally abusive I was for wanting to go camping without her. At that point, I was completely done trying to make it work. Melissa had made her choice. She wanted to be a completely different person who didn't respect me, didn't contribute to our household, and treated our marriage like it was holding her back from her true potential. Fine. If that's what she wanted, I'd give her exactly what she was asking for. Then the "we need a break" conversation happened on a Wednesday night. I was in the garage organizing my tools when Melissa came home around 9:30 p.m. She had that look on her face, the one women get when they're about to drop a bomb and think they're being noble about it. "Dylan, we need to talk," she announced dramatically. I put down my wrench and gave her my full attention, curious to see what kind of creative excuse she'd come up with this time. "I think we need to take a break to figure things out," she announced, delivering the classic "it's not you, it's me" speech disguised as relationship advice. I didn't react emotionally or start arguing. Instead, I just listened quietly to see how deep the hole she was digging would get. "We've been growing apart, and I need space to think about what I really want," she continued. "This isn't fair to either of us." "How long were you thinking?" I asked calmly. "Maybe a month or two, just enough time to get some clarity," she replied. Here's where most guys would start begging, pleading, or trying to negotiate some kind of compromise. Not me. I could see exactly what this was. She wanted permission to do whatever she was already doing while keeping me on the hook as her backup plan. "All right, I'll pack some stuff and stay at my brother Brandon's place," I said matter-of-factly. She looked genuinely confused, like that wasn't the response she'd been expecting at all. "Actually, I was thinking you could keep the house and I'll find somewhere else to stay," she said quickly. Now that was interesting and told me everything I needed to know. Melissa was absolutely obsessed with our house. She'd picked every single piece of furniture, spent countless weekends painting and redecorating, constantly talked about her plans for the backyard. This woman who treated our house like her personal design project suddenly wanted to leave it? That revelation told me everything I needed to know about her real intentions. "I can stay at my sister Katie's place," she added quickly, trying to sound casual. "Do whatever you think is best," I said calmly, not showing any emotion. She went upstairs and started packing at 9:30 p.m. on a Wednesday night. But this wasn't someone throwing a few things in a bag for a temporary stay. We're talking about serious, comprehensive packing, winter coats, jewelry, books, her good shoes, even small appliances from the kitchen. When she loaded the expensive espresso machine into her car, I had to ask the obvious question. "Wait, are you sure you need that for a temporary break?" I inquired. "I might be staying somewhere that doesn't have one," she replied weakly. "Right, because her sister Katie, who makes good money as a nurse, doesn't own an espresso maker." The lies were becoming more obvious by the minute. She packed until 1 a.m., making multiple trips to her Toyota Camry. When someone packs their entire life at 1 a.m., they're not planning to come back anytime soon. At 1:15 a.m., she came downstairs with her final bag. "I'll call you in a few days once I've had time to think," she said, trying to sound considerate. "Take all the time you need," I replied calmly. She tried to give me this awkward hug like we were friends saying goodbye instead of a married couple separating. Then she loaded her car and drove off into the night, probably thinking she'd successfully manipulated the situation to her advantage. I poured myself a drink and called my brother Brandon to fill him in on what had just happened. "Dude, that's not how breaks work," Brandon said immediately. "Nobody packs their entire life at 1 a.m. unless they already know exactly where they're going." "I know," I replied. "I'm filing for divorce, but I need to handle some things first." Brandon was absolutely right. The only question was where she was really going and who was waiting for her there. Anyway, I was getting to work. She wanted to play games? Fine, but she was about to learn that I don't lose games. I changed the rules entirely. The next morning, I woke up in a silent house for the first time in 5 years. No Melissa complaining about my alarm clock, no attitude, no passive-aggressive comments about whatever I'd supposedly done wrong. Just peace and quiet. The first thing I did was drive by her office to see if her car was in the parking lot. Melissa's car wasn't there, but then again, she'd probably called in sick to handle her separation drama. I parked across the street and waited for a while. Around 10:30 a.m., I saw her coworker Jake walking into the building. Jake was this guy who'd been to our barbecues a few times and seemed decent enough on the surface. But Melissa had been mentioning him more and more frequently lately. Jake got promoted to senior account manager. Jake has such creative ideas for campaigns. Jake thinks the company should expand into this new market. Everything started clicking into place. Friday after work, I decided to take a drive through the neighborhood where I remembered Jake lived. I found his street and drove slowly, looking for Melissa's silver Toyota. It took 4 passes before I spotted it sitting in Jake's driveway like it belonged there. Not street parking like a visitor would use, but the prime spot right next to the front door like someone who lived there permanently. I parked down the block and observed the situation for a while. Her car had moving boxes visible through the rear window, the same boxes she'd been packing Wednesday night. So much for staying with Sister Katie. The next day, I did some research on Jake. I found his social media profiles, looked up his address, and even found his property records online. Single guy, decent house, worked at the same company as Melissa. His social media showed a lot of work events and group photos, including several with Melissa going back months. There was one photo from a company happy hour in April that caught my attention. Melissa was standing next to Jake, and both of them looked pretty comfortable together. Her hand was resting on his arm, and they were standing closer than coworkers typically do. The caption was something generic about great team building, but it looked more like a date to me. I scrolled through more photos and found others that raised red flags. Melissa at company events, always positioned near Jake. Melissa at what looked like a restaurant with work friends, but it was just her and Jake in the photo. Melissa at some outdoor event with a group, but again she was positioned next to Jake like they were together as a couple. Going back through her social media, I found even more evidence. Check-ins at restaurants on nights she'd claimed to be working late. Photos tagged at places she'd never mentioned going to when I asked about her day. Comments from Jake on her posts that seemed way too personal for just coworkers. But I needed more than social media detective work. I needed real, concrete evidence. That weekend, Melissa had left her laptop at home in her rush to pack everything else. We shared an email account for household bills and joint expenses, and I'd always had access to it. Time to see what other accounts she might be using that I didn't know about. What I found was even worse than I'd imagined. I discovered email chains between Melissa and her therapist Victoria, but these weren't typical therapy communications. These were straight-up affair coaching sessions disguised as professional advice. Melissa, you deserve to prioritize your happiness. If Jake makes you feel alive and appreciated, that's your authentic self calling, read one email. Marriage shouldn't feel like a prison. You have every right to explore connections that bring you joy and fulfillment, said another. The most damning one read, maintaining your current situation while exploring your feelings with Jake shows emotional maturity. You're giving yourself options. This woman was charging my wife $175 per session to encourage her to have an affair. She wasn't a therapist. She was a professional homewrecker getting paid to destroy marriages. I researched Victoria Walsh more thoroughly. Her email signature said, Life Transformation Coach and Relationship Specialist. Her website was full of therapy-sounding language about authentic living and breaking free from limiting beliefs. But when I checked the state licensing database, there was no Victoria Walsh listed anywhere as a licensed therapist or psychologist. She was practicing psychology without a license, which is illegal. I called my sister Nicole, who's an attorney, to get her take on the situation. Dylan, if this woman is taking money to provide psychological services without proper licensing, that's a felony, she told me. And if she's specifically encouraging infidelity, that could be very relevant to your divorce case. Nicole advised me to document everything before making any moves, which was smart advice. I started building a comprehensive file of evidence. Photos of Melissa's car at Jake's house with timestamps. Screenshots of their social media interactions going back months. Copies of the emails between Melissa and fake therapist Victoria. Bank statements showing cash withdrawals Melissa had been making, probably to fund her separate lifestyle while she was still married to me. The pattern was crystal clear. This wasn't some sudden decision to take a break and figure things out. Melissa had been planning this for months, using her fake therapist as an excuse to justify what she was already doing behind my back. I also changed our Netflix password, petty move maybe, but necessary under the circumstances. The digging revealed something else interesting. Melissa had been using our joint credit card for expenses that didn't make sense if she was just working late or hanging out with girlfriends. Dinners for 2 when she claimed to be working late. Hotel charges on days she was supposedly at work. Gas purchases near Jake's neighborhood when she had no reason to be there for any legitimate purpose. She'd been living a complete double life for months, and I had the evidence to prove it. but I wanted to see how long she'd keep lying to my face before I made my move and showed her exactly what consequences looked like. Monday evening, right on schedule, Melissa called me. She sounded lighter and happier than she had in months, probably because she thought she'd successfully pulled off her master plan without me catching on. "Hey Dylan, how are you doing?" she asked, trying to sound casual and caring. "Just fine. How's your temporary living situation working out?" I replied calmly. "It's good. I'm staying with Katie, and it's really helping me think clearly," she lied smoothly. "And how's Katie doing?" I asked, curious to see how deep she'd dig this hole. "She's good, you know how she is. Busy with work," Melissa responded. "Still seeing that therapist?" I continued. "Yeah, Victoria's been really helpful in understanding my authentic feelings and what I need to be happy," she said, using the same buzzwords from the emails I'd already read. She was literally reading from a script her fake therapist had given her. "When do you think you'll have things figured out?" I asked. "These things take time, Dylan. I don't want to rush into any major decisions," she replied carefully. Translation: she wanted to test drive her upgrade while keeping me on standby in case it didn't work out the way she planned. "Take all the time you need," I said calmly, giving her exactly what she thought she wanted. After we hung up, I called Nicole back. "I want to file for divorce," I told her directly. "Are you sure? Some couples do work through separations," she said, playing devil's advocate like a good attorney should. "Nicole, she's been screwing her coworker for months while playing house with me. This isn't a rough patch, this is a calculated betrayal." "Understood," she replied. "Let's move forward." Tuesday morning, I filed the papers. We live in Florida, which is a fault state where adultery actually matters in divorce proceedings. The prenuptial agreement her family had insisted on was about to become her worst nightmare. Time to see how Melissa would handle the real consequences of her actions. Wednesday afternoon, Melissa's carefully constructed world began falling apart piece by piece. She tried to log into our Netflix account and couldn't get in. She immediately called me, and I could hear the panic starting to creep into her voice. "Dylan, why can't I get into Netflix?" she demanded. "Changed the password." It seemed logical to take a break from shared accounts if we're taking a break from our relationship, I explained calmly. "That's really petty. Give me the password right now," she yelled. "Why can't a woman have some peace of mind?" "Doesn't Jake have Netflix?" I asked innocently. "Huh? Jake? What do you mean?" she stammered, suddenly confused and caught off guard. She was genuinely shocked that I'd mentioned his name, which was hilarious considering how obvious she'd been about everything. "Can we skip the part where you pretend you don't know what I'm talking about?" "I mean, I know you've been screwing another dude, Melissa," I said matter-of-factly. There was a long silence on the other end, the sound of someone's entire world falling apart in real time. "Can we talk in person?" she asked quietly, her voice shaking. "Absolutely. Should I meet you at our house, or would you prefer I come to Jake's place?" I replied. She hung up immediately. I could practically hear her panic attack through the phone. Within an hour, she was at my door. The confident woman who'd walked out Wednesday night thinking she was so clever was completely gone. This was someone who'd been caught red-handed and knew it. "How long have you known?" she asked, trying to assess the damage. "Long enough," I replied, keeping my cards close to my chest. I had my phone recording the entire conversation. Florida is a one-party consent state, so everything she said would be admissible in court. "Dylan, it's not what you think," she started with the classic deflection. "I think you've been having an affair with Jake for months, moved in with him, and asked for a break to avoid calling it what it actually is while keeping me as your backup plan," I stated the facts clearly. "That's not exactly," she began to protest. "You packed winter clothes for a temporary break, Melissa. You took the expensive espresso machine. You lied about staying with Katie. Your car has been parked in Jake's driveway for 4 days, I interrupted, laying out the evidence systematically. She tried to deny it, but I had photos with timestamps. Then she tried to minimize it, but I had the email chains with her fake therapist encouraging the affair. Finally, she broke down and admitted everything because there was no point in lying anymore. It started as just talking. Jake understood me in ways you didn't, she said, trying to make it sound romantic. When did it become physical? I asked directly. A few months ago, but Dylan, I was going to tell you eventually, she claimed. You were going to tell me eventually? When exactly? After you'd finished test driving your replacement. I shot back. It's complicated. I have feelings for Jake, but I didn't want to just throw away our marriage without being sure, she explained, as if that somehow made it better. So you decided to have both keep me around as insurance while you screw around with him. I summarized her strategy perfectly. Then she really showed her true colors. Instead of apologizing or showing any genuine remorse, she started making demands. I need more time to figure this out. I think I love Jake, but I don't want to get divorced yet, she said, as if she had any say in the matter at this point. Can't we stay married but separated? She started to suggest. I blinked twice, completely stunned by the sheer stupidity of what I was hearing. You want me to stay married to you while you live with another man? I asked, making sure I understood her insane proposal correctly. We're not playing house here, Melissa. It's not that simple. Victoria says it's healthy to explore all your options before making permanent decisions, she replied, still quoting her fake therapist even in this situation. Anyway, I filed for divorce Tuesday, I informed her calmly. Her face went completely white. You did what? She gasped. Filed for divorce. I'm making it easier for you. Now you don't have to be confused anymore, I explained logically. When were you going to tell me? She demanded, as if she had any right to be upset. Now, I said simply. You can't just decide to get divorced without talking to me, she yelled. Right, but you could just decide to cheat and play games instead of being honest? You could have told me from the beginning that you can't be a wife anymore instead of wasting my time, I pointed out. She started screaming even louder. This isn't fair. I was honest with you about needing space. You were honest after I caught you, and only because you wanted permission to keep your affair going, I corrected her. It's not an affair if we're separated, she argued desperately. This is marriage, Melissa, not a TV show. Are you 15 years old? I asked, incredulous at her childish logic. I have rights. Half of everything is mine, she declared, suddenly concerned about the financial implications. Actually, you abandoned our home to live with an affair partner, which works against you in property division, especially when you lied about it. Oh, and remember the prenup your family insisted on? I know. Sucks to suck, I informed her of the reality of her situation. She started crying, but they were angry tears, not remorseful ones. You planned this! You tricked me into admitting everything, she accused me. Yeah, I planned this. You can't just leave me. We built everything together. I am your wife, she shouted desperately. You were my wife. Not anymore, I corrected her firmly. She cried more, yelled, screamed, and carried on for what felt like hours. All of her ranting was about how unfair this was, how she deserved a chance to explore her feelings, and how the prenup wasn't supposed to work against her. You're really not going to fight for our marriage? 5 years mean nothing to you? She asked, trying to guilt me. Fight for what? And did it mean anything to you, though? I shot back. She threatened to get a lawyer, said she'd fight the divorce, claimed I was being vindictive and cruel. Finally, she played the ultimate victim card. You never loved me. If you loved me, you'd forgive me and try to work this out. You're not supposed to throw our marriage away over my mental health issues. I have pressures and needs. I was just working through my feelings. She screamed loud enough that the dead probably got up from their graves. The neighbor's dog started howling in response. Are you done? I simply asked. Apparently, that question set her off even more. She left screaming about how I'd regret this, how she'd take me for everything I was worth, and how her lawyer would destroy me in court. Good luck with that, Melissa, I called after her as she stormed out. 2 weeks later, she learned what happens when reality meets delusion, and it wasn't pretty at all. The universe has a sense of humor, apparently. While Melissa was busy trying to figure out how to screw me over in the divorce, her perfect new life was falling apart faster than a house of cards in a hurricane. The first domino to fall was Jake himself. Turns out the homeboy wasn't as committed to this relationship as Melissa had thought. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned that Jake had been telling people that Melissa was just going through a rough patch and staying with him temporarily to get back on her feet. When Melissa tried to make their relationship official, changing her social media status, posting couple photos, talking about future plans together, Jake backed off hard. Suddenly, he needed to take things slow and wasn't ready to be the rebound guy. Think about that irony for a moment. This dude was perfectly fine with screwing another man's wife, but when it came time to actually commit to her, he got cold feet. Melissa had blown up her entire marriage for a guy who didn't even want her long-term. Thursday night, 2 weeks after our confrontation, she called me crying hysterically. Jake says he needs space. He thinks I moved too fast, and he's not ready for a serious relationship. she sobbed into the phone. He said he thought I just needed temporary help getting back on my feet. He didn't realize I wanted something permanent, she continued. Dylan, I don't have anywhere to go, and this divorce is going to destroy me financially. And this is all you managed to say? Shocking, I replied sarcastically. What happened to staying with Katie, though? I asked, already knowing the answer. Are you freaking kidding me? I'm telling you I have nowhere to go. God, you're being vindictive. You always were. Victoria was right about you, she snapped, still blaming everyone but herself. Yeah, about Victoria. She's about to have bigger problems than you, I told her ominously. What the hell do you mean? She asked, confused and panicked. You'll find out, I said before hanging up. The next day, her sister Katie called, trying to negotiate some kind of deal on Melissa's behalf. Melissa told me everything, Dylan. She made a mistake. Can't you work something out? It's not worth ending a marriage over, Katie pleaded. Would your husband work something out if you made that mistake, Katie? I asked her directly. There was complete silence on the other end of the line. Don't bring my husband into this. It's different, she finally responded weakly. Okay then, don't tell me how I should handle my cheating soon-to-be ex-wife because it's different too, I replied firmly. She hung up without another word. Meanwhile, I was working on my unfinished business with Victoria. This woman had been taking money to encourage affairs, giving unlicensed psychological advice, and calling herself a therapist when she had absolutely no credentials. Time to introduce her to the legal system properly. I compiled everything I had on her. The emails showing illegal therapy practice, her website advertising psychological services without proper licensing, payment records from our joint account showing what Melissa had been paying her, and proof that she had no license or credentials whatsoever. I filed complaints with the Florida State Board of Psychology, the Attorney General's office, and the District Attorney's office. Practicing psychology without a license is a felony, especially when you're taking money for it and giving dangerous advice. The investigation moved surprisingly fast. Within 2 weeks, Victoria got a cease and desist order. A week later, criminal charges were filed for fraud and unlicensed practice of psychology. Her entire business collapsed overnight. Her website was shut down, her bank accounts were frozen, and she was ordered to refund all her clients. She was looking at serious prison time and massive legal bills. But it got even better. Other victims started coming forward once the story became public. Turns out Victoria had been running this scam for over 3 years, giving dangerous advice to vulnerable people who trusted her. One woman said Victoria told her to stop taking antidepressants because they blocked authentic emotions. Another guy was encouraged to abandon his wife and kids for spiritual growth and self-discovery. The local news picked up the story. Woman charged with illegal psychology practice ran on Channel 7 with Victoria's mugshot prominently displayed. Melissa saw it and called me in a complete panic. What the hell? Did you report Victoria to the police? She demanded. I might have, I confirmed casually. I can't believe you destroyed her life too, she yelled. Too bad, I replied without any sympathy. But wait, the situation was still getting worse for Melissa, and I didn't even have to lift a finger at this point. Jake's ex-wife found out about the affair and went absolutely nuclear. They share custody of a 9-year-old daughter, and when mom learned that dad was shacking up with a married woman in the house where her daughter visits, she filed for emergency custody modification immediately. Jake suddenly had lawyers to deal with, family court drama, and was potentially going to lose significant time with his kid. His traditional parents got involved too, driving over for a loud driveway confrontation that the whole neighborhood witnessed. They demanded he end the relationship immediately or face being completely cut off from the family. At work, the affair became public knowledge in a company of about 60 people. Everyone knew within days what had happened. Melissa went from being a respected marketing coordinator to the office pariah, the woman who destroyed her marriage for a guy who didn't even want her long-term. HR called them both in for separate meetings. Their personal drama was affecting workplace morale and productivity in measurable ways. Jake got transferred to a different team to minimize contact between them. Melissa got moved to the satellite office across town, which was basically professional exile. Melissa couldn't handle the shame and isolation, so she quit without having another job lined up. No income, no boyfriend who wanted her around full-time, no marriage to fall back on. She had to move back in with her parents at 26 years old. Her parents, who had always liked me and been proud of their daughter's marriage, weren't sympathetic to her situation at all. Her dad told her she'd made her bed and now had to lie in it. Her mom gave her the silent treatment for a full week. Our mutual friends picked sides, and most chose mine. They'd been suspicious of Melissa's behavior for months and felt personally betrayed when the truth came out. The few friends who tried to stay neutral got tired of hearing her constantly complain about the consequences of her own actions. The legal situation was going exactly as Nicole had predicted it would. Melissa's recorded confession, documentation of her abandoning our home, and financial records showing she'd been maintaining a separate household with Jake gave us an airtight case. The prenuptial agreement her family had insisted on was working exactly as designed. No spousal support due to proven adultery. Minimal claim on marital assets due to abandonment. She was going to walk away with almost nothing. Through all this chaos, Victoria had kept taking Melissa's money right up until her arrest, even as Melissa's world was collapsing around her. This woman was collecting $175 per session to tell her client she was staying true to her authentic self. What a professional vulture. By the end of the month, Melissa had lost her job, her boyfriend, her independence, her reputation, and most of her friends. She was living with her parents, unemployed, and facing a divorce that would leave her financially devastated. But the story wasn't over yet. 6 months after Melissa walked out thinking she'd successfully upgraded her life, it was time to tally the final score. Spoiler alert. She got absolutely screwed in every possible way. The divorce finalized in December, and thanks to the prenuptial agreement, documented adultery, and her abandonment of our home, Melissa's settlement was absolutely brutal. She got back her original down payment contribution minus depreciation, which amounted to about $9,500 total. No spousal support whatsoever, no claim on my business, no ongoing financial connection to me in any capacity. At the final hearing, Melissa looked like she'd aged 7 years in just 8 months. The stress and consequences of her actions had taken a visible toll on her appearance and demeanor. Her lawyer tried desperately to argue that the prenuptial agreement was unfair and should be thrown out. But when you have recorded confessions and photographic evidence of adultery, judges don't really care about your feelings or excuses. During the paperwork signing, she kept looking at me like she wanted to say something meaningful, but her attorney kept her quiet and focused on the legal proceedings. Walking out of the courthouse after everything was finalized, she finally spoke to me directly. "Dylan, I'm sorry for everything that happened," she said quietly, trying to sound sincere. "I'm sure you are now," I replied without any emotion. "Can't we at least be friends after all this?" she asked desperately. "Sure, we can be siblings too," I responded sarcastically. She looked at me like I just murdered her dog in front of her. That was our last conversation, and I was perfectly fine with that being the end of our communication forever. The aftermath was even more brutal than the divorce itself had been. Jake had dumped Melissa 4 months earlier, telling her that she'd brought too much chaos and drama into his life. The custody battles with his ex-wife, family drama with his parents, and workplace issues had convinced him that she simply wasn't worth all the trouble she caused. Melissa had a complete mental breakdown after losing everything. She ended up staying with her parents for 5 months while getting actual therapy from a licensed professional this time. Eventually, she found work at a smaller marketing firm for significantly less money than she'd been making before. It was the kind of entry-level job that recent college graduates take, not someone with her years of experience. But when you're known throughout the industry as the woman who destroyed her marriage for a coworker who didn't want her long-term, career options become extremely limited. She's living in a tiny studio apartment now because that's all her reduced income can realistically support. Jake bounced back from the situation relatively quickly. He worked out the custody situation with his ex-wife through mediation, managed to keep his job despite the drama, and within 7 months was dating someone new, someone single this time around. Funny how that works when you actually want to commit to someone. Victoria pled guilty to fraud and unlicensed practice of psychology. She got 3 years probation, 600 hours of community service, and had to pay back over $65,000 to all her victims. She's permanently banned from any counseling or coaching work in the state of Florida and had to relocate to another state where nobody knows her criminal history. As for me, life got significantly better in every measurable way. My business is absolutely thriving without the constant stress and drama of a failing marriage. I met Sophia through my hiking group. She's a 29-year-old teacher who is respectful, kind, and acts like a functional adult. We're taking things slow, have been on several dates, and for now things seem to be going great. I'm not pushing anything though, because I'm still genuinely enjoying my peaceful life post-Melissa. There's something to be said for coming home to a quiet house where nobody's complaining about everything you do or questioning every decision you make. If I have any advice for the guys out there who might be reading this and seeing similarities to their own situations, it's this: don't marry a teenager. Wait until they've had time to figure out who they actually are as adults before you commit your life to them. The person you think you're marrying at 18 might be completely different by the time they're 26, and you might not like who they become. Also, trust your instincts. When someone starts acting completely different, there's usually a reason for it. Don't make excuses for disrespectful behavior or convince yourself that things will go back to normal if you just try harder. Sometimes people show you exactly who they are, and you need to believe them the first time. Looking back, I can honestly say that Melissa leaving was the best thing that could have happened to me. I just wish she'd been honest about what she wanted instead of putting us both through months of lies and manipulation. But I suppose some people need to learn the hard way that actions have consequences, and you can't always get what you want by being deceptive and selfish.